Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily, a podcast dedicated to helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, and I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI in education is to work with it openly. So let's begin with a Gallup poll published last week. Gallup surveyed more than 2,000 public school teachers across the country earlier this year and found that just 18% report receiving any formal guidance from school administrators on how AI tools should be used. About a third received no guidance at all, and the area with the least guidance, direct student interaction. 69% of teachers say they've received no guidance on how to use AI for one-on-one instruction or tutoring. 58% say the same thing about using AI to give students feedback. Feedback is exactly where the design decisions are hardest, and it turns out where they matter most. So let's take a look at what the research actually says about feedback, and then talk about what it means for the tools teachers are adopting and increasingly building themselves. So a team of researchers at East China Normal University published a study earlier this year in NPJ Science of Learning, a Nature journal. They set up a controlled experiment with college students not K-12, and a purpose-built lab chatbot, not something you can download, but still I think the findings are interesting and relevant. The researchers designed 3 versions of an educational chatbot, each giving a different kind of feedback. One group got what they called metacognitive feedback, prompts that asked students to reflect on their own thinking, monitor what they understood and what they didn't, and examine their reasoning. A second group got affective feedback, encouragement, praise, reassurance, the kind of thing that says, "You're doing well, keep going." A third group got neutral feedback, essentially a Rust prompt that served as a control. Then they measured 2 things. Retention, could students remember what they learned? And transfer, could they apply it to a new problem they hadn't seen before? The metacognitive group outperformed the others on transfer. The affective group beat neutral on retention, but not on transfer. And transfer is the harder and more meaningful outcome. It's the difference between a student who can reproduce what they studied and a student who can use it somewhere new. The researchers are also using brain imaging to track neural activity during the study. The brain scans are interesting, but they're not really the argument. The behavioral finding is the argument. Prompting students to monitor their own reasoning produced more durable learning than encouraging them. It doesn't require a brain scan to be credible. What the study gives us is the empirical language to say something precisely that teachers have known for a long time. That brings me to something we've talked about on this show before. A teacher developed a 3-column note catcher for students who are receiving AI feedback on their writing. And the columns asked basically, what do I agree with in this feedback? What do I disagree with? And what am I going to do next? There's no tech required here, just a piece of paper with 3 columns. But the structure is doing the same thing that the study measured. It's asking students to evaluate the feedback rather than just absorb it. It creates a moment of self-monitoring between the AI's output and the student's next action. The student has to take a position. That's what turns feedback into learning rather than just revision. The study confirms that what the classroom practice was already doing, and what it suggests is that the difference between feedback that builds understanding and feedback that manages feelings is a design decision, whether you're aware you're making it or not. So let's turn to why that matters right now specifically. Until pretty recently, most teachers were on the receiving end of AI tools. A vendor built something, district adopted it, teachers figured out how to use it. It's still happening, but something shifted. Teachers are increasingly building their own tools, and the infrastructure to do that arrived fast. The EdTech Research Center data from mid-2025 shows that 61% of teachers are using AI-driven tools in their classrooms, at least a little, up from 34% in December 2023, nearly double in under 2 years. OpenAI launched a free platform specifically for K-12 educators in late 2025 that includes custom chatbot creation. And Canvas, which tens of millions of teachers and students use to manage coursework, now lets educators build chatbots using plain language, no coding required. The tools to build a chatbot are no longer the province of developers or well-resourced districts. They're available to any teacher with time and curiosity. So now, a preprint from March 2025, that is a small study of 7 K-12 teachers, so this is just a starting point, looked at how teachers actually design their own pedagogical chatbots. The finding that stood out to me was that teachers are prioritizing building bots that are task-specific and aligned to their lessons. It's the right instinct, but the study also found that most teachers, especially those newer to bot creation, didn't have a clear framework for what the bot should do when the student gets something wrong or gets stuck. The content alignment was there, but the feedback design wasn't. This is where the Gallup finding and the research study converge. 58% of teachers are getting no guidance on AI for student feedback. The tools that build feedback bots are widely available, and the default feedback behavior in most AI tools is some version of encouragement because it's easier to design and because tools built for engagement tend to optimize for keeping students in the product. That's how they make money. Based on what this study found, that default is the weaker choice for learning that transfers. So, stepping back from what we've just been discussing, what does this mean if you are a classroom teacher? If you've been building or you're thinking about building a custom bot, you have to treat the feedback behavior as a deliberate design decision. When a student gets something wrong, what does the bot do? If the answer is that it reassures them and tries again, that's probably not going to be enough based on the research. A bot that asks a student, what were you thinking when you chose this answer, or what part of this feels less clear to you, is doing something closer to what the research supports. The content matters, but the feedback behavior is where the learning either happens with greater likelihood or does not. If you're an instructional coach, this is a productive lens to bring into any conversation about AI tools, whether teachers built them or bought them, not as a gotcha, but as a genuine design literacy question. What does this tool do when a student is wrong? What does it do when a student is stuck? Those questions will tell you a lot about whether the tool is designed with the learning in mind or with engagement in mind. Those aren't always the same thing, and given that most teachers are navigating this without formal guidance, that conversation is part of the support structure they're not otherwise getting. If you're a district leader, the Gallup findings are a clear signal that the guidance gap is real. It's landing hardest in the areas that are pedagogically most consequential. And feedback design is now a fair procurement question and a fair professional development topic. Asking vendors what their product does when the student makes an error is a reasonable expectation, and building that question into how you support teachers is the work that most districts haven't yet started to do. So for Back to School 26, this is an opportunity. And the larger pattern is one we've examined on this show before. Tools tend to get designed around what's easy to measure, like completion, engagement, time on task. But metacognitive feedback is harder to script, harder to scale, harder to measure. It's probably also why most bots don't default to it. But as more educators move from adopting tools to building them, often without formal guidance, the feedback design question falls to the educator. The teacher with a 3-column note catcher made the deliberate choice about what happens after the AI speaks to a student. The question is whether teachers building bots today are making that same choice, or whether they're filling a guidance vacuum with whatever the platform defaults to. I'd love to know where you are on this. Bots are being created left and right. If you've created a custom bot or customized one for your students, how did you think about the feedback? Was it a conscious choice, something you arrived at by default? Were you waiting for guidance from your district? What would you want to hear from your district? Drop any of that into the comments. I read them all. Thanks as always for joining, and we'll see you next time.